I'm not quite sure how I refer to people who go under the sobriquet of Anonymous 20220, but this person, who it seems sort of pusillanimous to have a YouTube name Anonymous. If you want to leave comments, really, I think one should probably do it with a name that can be identified. Anyway, this person says, the average person doesn't look to the likes of Quentin Crisp for inspiration, Tim. During his teen years, he worked briefly as a rent boy, didn't he? Well, yes, maybe he did. I mean, I find Quentin Crisp quite an interesting character, not least because of the film with John Hurt. He was he was born as Dennis Charles Pratt in 1908. He became a writer, raconteur, an actor whose life and work has had an impact on literature, the LGBTQ plus community, the arts. His legacy is multifaceted, combining a distinctive literary voice with an influential public persona that defied social norms, challenged perceptions of gender and sexuality, and fame. And I think he's rightly invoked in this situation because he's somebody who has certainly had a dodgy past, and he turned it round by becoming famous. That was the point I was making. That you achieve notoriety and people will cross the street, as he pointed out. People will cross the street to say, hello, I saw you on the telly. He grew up in this conservative middle-class family in Sutton at a time when society was deeply homophobic, rigidly conformist, and from an early age he had this flamboyant and unapologetically effeminate demeanour which subjected him to relentless bullying, social ostracism. Despite, or perhaps because of this, he embraced his identity with a defiant elegance, cultivating a distinctive style characterized by flamboyant clothing, makeup, dyed hair. And this personal presentation was not just aesthetic, but a profound act of resistance, positioning him as a living work of art in an era that sought to erase or punish visible queerness. His most famous work, The Naked Civil Servant, published in 1968, is a memoir that recounts his experiences as an openly gay man in the mid-20th century. And the title itself is a sardonic nod to his time working as a professional model for art classes, a job that symbolized his willingness to expose himself both literally and metaphorically to a society that largely rejected him. The memoir is celebrated not only for its wit and candour, but also for its unflinching portrayal of a life lived on the margins. It offered a rare first-person insight into the experiences of queer individuals at a time when such voices were almost entirely absent from mainstream literature. His unapologetic openness about his sexuality and his critique of social norms made him an icon for the gay community, both in the UK and then internationally. And he lived openly as a gay man at a time when homosexuality was still criminalised in Britain, enduring violence, discrimination, poverty with a resilient and often darkly humorous outlook. I think if you want a film that celebrates his time, The Naked Civil Servant is significantly more uplifting than the film with Ian McKellen called The Critic. Quentin Crisp's visibility, his refusal to conform to social expectations of discretion and shame, inspired many to embrace their identities with similar courage and pride. However, he was a controversial figure even in the gay community. His later comments, particularly during the AIDS crisis of the 1980s, were seen as dismissive and even harmful, which led to criticism and debate about his role as a community representative, in much the same way as the gay community was fairly dismissive of the camp comedian, the Kenneth Williams, the John Inman characters, and their portrayal on screen. Nonetheless, Quentin Crisp's contribution to visibility and the discussion of LGBTQ plus issues cannot be overstated. And beyond his literary work, Quentin Crisp was a celebrated performer, a social commentator. He toured exclusively, giving one-man shows until he was in his 90s, a blend of stand-up comedy, philosophical reflection, theatrical performance, and his ability to weave together humour, pathos, scathing social critique makes him an almost unique voice in the arts, up there with Kenneth Williams. Kenneth Williams simply appeared on the occasional chat show. Quentin Crisp made this a life. He appeared in several films as well, most notably playing the role of Queen Elizabeth I in Sally Potter's Orlando, a performance that was both a testament to his acting talent and his subversive approach to gender. His sharp wit, his penchant for aphorism, made him a memorable critic of both social conventions and countercultures that sought to oppose him. He was unafraid to critique the gay liberation movement, feminist activism, and the arts establishment with a style that was simultaneously charming and provocative. His legacy is complex. He remains a vital figure in the history of gay rights and visibility, particularly for his role in making queer lives more visible and challenging the pervasive norms of his time. His memoirs, particularly The Naked Civil Servant and How to Become a Virgin, are seminal works in queer literature, offering a deeply personal narrative that's both a historical document and a work of art in its own right. And as an artist and a performer, he blurs the boundaries between life and performance, making his very existence a form of social comment, a form of artistic expression. And his life and work continue to inspire discussions about the nature of identity, the role of the artist in society, the ways in which personal narrative intersects with broader social and political histories, the personal attitude, because what he promotes is his opinion in a gilded form, but it's his opinion, and waspish opinion often. And so again, I come back to the new film with Ian McKellen, which is a beautiful film to look at, but it leaves a hollow taste in the mouth because there is no character in the film that is attractive. Each character in the film is horrible. Be in no doubt, each character is horrible. And Quentin Crisp comes across as vulnerable. And he was never afraid to allow that vulnerability to come out in a way that made him approachable. That is why people cross the street, I think. Not because he'd been on the telly, but because his vulnerability was evident. And that is what publicity does for you, and that's the point I was perhaps trying to make. He dared to live authentically in a hostile world, using his art, his life, to challenge the status quo and provoke thought and discussion. And his impact on literature, gay history, the arts is profound, making him a true iconoclast whose influence endures to this day. Iconoclast, yes, but also an icon whose influence endures to this day.